All right, welcome everybody. Just checking to make sure that, yep, all right, you should be able to see this stuff. Let's see the screen. Welcome to week 3 of spreadsheet applications, IT254. Hope everyone had a good week. I saw a lot of good progress being made. Could be better, but you know, if I answered a few questions inside of IntelliPath, people had issues with some of the questions that it was asking, and gave some feedback on some of those questions. I had basically what little questions I had inside the email were pretty straightforward. Not going to get into that, but all right, this week we're going to go over charts, pie charts, bar charts, scatter plots, etc. Just a reminder that this week is we're going into Unit 3, so the discussion boards are due on Thursday. The initial posts with the follow-up post on Sunday, and then IntelliPath is on Sunday as well. Like I said, some of the overall productivity, we had 17 really good scores so far, making some good timing on the execution of Unit 2 and whatnot, right? So I think overall, while the upper charts percentages are misleading because it also includes people who've retaken this class, that's why it looks high as it does. But overall, the secondary chart shows the hour of learning. That's really the trend we're seeing. Inside of the discussion board for Unit 3, I want you to give me a reason as to why you would choose 2 specific types of charts as your preferred thing to doing a family budget with. So basically, if you look up in the upper right corner of the slide deck, you'll see a little graph there. What it shows is like a bar chart, sideways bar chart. That's an example of how you could use family budget, the monthly expenses being the total amount across all of the expense categories. But really, it's not the best way to represent that, in my opinion. So I want you to choose 2 of the chart types out of the 15 that are available in Excel, and basically tell you why this particular chart type is better for your needs inside of a family budget, as it were. Now, inside of IntelliPath, we'll have these 8 objectives here, all related to charts in some manner in that process. So pie charts, the biggest benefit of a pie chart is that it shows you a percentage of the whole. So basically, if a percentage of whole, so when you look at a pie chart, it shows you slices, as if you literally sliced a piece of pie out of a cake, or a piece of a slice out of a like a apple pie or something, right? Or cut a slice off of a cake. The idea being, whatever that slice is showing you represents a percentage of the greater whole. Pie charts always calculate to 100% in the entire unity, and your thing is at figuring out how big various slices are relative to the data you're using. So your data is not always going to be a 0 to 100 type values, right? So they could be thousands, they could be tens, could be odd numbers, that doesn't matter, right? But the collective total summary of all of those numbers that go into the chart is what creates a pie chart in that context, right? And the pie chart then shows you the percentage of all the slices added together to equal 100%, and it gives you the relative size by, then you can figure out what the percentage of your overall from that number is to the overall number, and figure it out. So it's good for a lot of examples. So bar charts are good for determining numbers of quantities of an item in a given category. Column charts are good for comparison across categories. Like if you think of Wall Street, you've seen the up and down arrows and dotted chart stuff. Line charts are typically those that help you with trends, and scatter plots are basically points along XY axes that may or may not be correlated, preferably being correlated because that helps you explain as to why you got those numbers based on a value. So there's some basic elements of a chart: title, legend, axis, chart plot, some basic options, but you can get into a number of different aspects of the various charts elements that are useful for describing things, right? So eventually you also get into like sorry. Chart layout, which gives you like the general pieces of the pieces that might compose of a chart, how it's laid out. You can actually adjust those as you want to in order to make things more. Let's mute Iris. Okay. So you can adjust those things for your visual layout. So you can do it. You can also change colors. If you were to create a stack chart, basically you would you could search for the term add chart to any type of set of data, and then you can figure that out. So I'm going to switch over to Excel here for a second. So if I took, let's just take some copy of data, throw it over here. So in this context, I have data that represents sales by region, right? So say $500,000 in North Q1. We'll just, for the sake of the discussion today, make a couple of minor adjustments to the values. So with this, I could say, I can highlight this range, say add chart. And in there, I could say insert a type of line chart here. This is what is going to give me the 2D line chart as an example. I could use that, or I could go to a 3D area chart to represent percentages whole of the total amounts, either a percentage of the whole here, or I could go to this one, which gives you basically trends on basically sales and numbers. You could break it up by regions, so they're individually not stacked on top of each other. Same difference with line charts, right? If I wanted to give you this one being the percentage of the whole of the conglomerate versus the comparative per season. So you can figure out basically on what kinds of charts you think make sense in this context. So if you do that, you click on a chart, gives you a quick summary here of how those things are in relative to each other. And you can also make live adjustments to your data set that skews your data accordingly and adjust your chart scaling accordingly, right? So, I mean, that's just trying to do it in a quick manner using a line chart. You can also then choose from the different types, the 15 different types. If, say, you want to do a bar chart, you could do it like this, where it'll give you the sales quarters across the regions and go in the value wise. I'm not a big fan of that style of chart, but line charts are pretty popular. Stock market charts, which are sometimes a little difficult to understand, but you get the idea. But let's go to a pie chart. So in a pie chart, like I said, it gives you the percentage of a whole. So in this context, if you look at how each quarter is being done, It'll also then highlight based on which section you want to talk about. It'll tell you how or gets those numbers from. So oh, wait a minute, that's just showing me a part of. All right, let's do this pie chart here. Yeah, it's only going to show you the North region in this context because of the way it was set up. So but say we go back to the pie chart, right? So if you need to build a personal budget, one of the goals is to set up your categories. So you build yourself a set of categories that you're going to work with, and then how much money you want to put into each of those categories. Set yourself so that you have a percentage being built of that size of the item versus your total budget. So that's why I have it set to this particular cell budget in the data set divided by the total budget size of the entire thing. So if your rent was say $1,500 per month, and you looked at your budget, and your total budget in that context was $2,875, that means your rent is covering a little over 50% of your monthly expenses, right? Now, to put it into perspective to something that's more realistic and understanding, other being miscellaneous categories such as medical expenses, copays, doctor's visits, and whatnot. If you took the average new car payment that people have been signing for today, which is an 84-month loan, they are paying somewhere in the range of $785 now a month for a car payment, which is ridiculous. So in order to justify that size of car and having your mortgage would be within your ultimate goal, which is you should never have your living expenses be more than 20% of your monthly take home. So that really means you need to be having a budget of a $1,500. That's even not enough. Yeah, to be basically living with that kind of mortgage of say $1,500 a month, your overall percentage of your budget needs to be closer to 20 to 25%. So that means you need something like closer to 6,000 actually, in order to justify that kind of rent, since in order to keep it there, right? Now the thing is that with the ridiculousness of the cost of cars, basically, if you're only making 3,000 and you're trying to basically pay for a car uh, with that and live within the budget. Let's just set this up. So no budget, no car, no system with a vehicle with an engine or a motor in it should be more than 20% of your take-home pay, period, and really no more than 20% of your annual pay, period. So for people who live on a budget of say is $4,000 in the end, roughly, their total now let's just make this 500 here. Make this 125 a month. Car insurance would be say 200 a month. Food is $225 a month typically. Utilities is like $175 a month, which generally also includes cell phones and water. So if you have to live within a budget of say $3,000 a month, roughly, your percentage needs to be here at 25% for your home. So you basically have to live within a mortgage rent of around but you can get the idea by playing with these numbers that you can generate a budget such that you can be reflective of your overall plan, such that you can get your percentages to work with it. So you can figure out what your normal cost is. You can figure out the percentages of your budget in the end, and then you can figure out where you need to trim or change your monthly budget such that you can extrapolate so that this comes down to the 25% goal, which is really what you need in order to be able to be not house poor, is what they call it. By being house poor, stop that. So once you exceed 25% of your mortgage and your living expenses each month on your basic take-home pay, you start to what they consider to be house poor. House poor means that you don't have enough cash flow to actually live day to day effectively, or as it approaches 40%, you basically become stressed out and are constantly falling behind on bills. So that's why you should never exceed your rent or your monthly expenses of living to be 25% of your monthly take-home pay, and your value of your cars cannot exceed 20% of your overall annual pay because of how fast cars depreciate. The hit in the value of the car and the price you paid on the car, you basically are a major losing proposition monetarily by having vehicles that are exceeding 20% of your annual take-home pay from a financial standpoint. So there's your personal finance lesson for the day. But ultimately, it's best to have no car payment. I haven't had a car payment in nearly 20 years now. So, and that's because I don't also go out and buy brand new cars. I just look for good deals at around the $10,000 to $15,000 range and then pay outright in cash for those. So, but you want to get to the point where you can live like that, so you can work with your budget, keep your percentages of your food, really. So you want to do that. All right. You want to keep your percentage of your food, your percentages of here, insurance, gas around 5% or so, and your other to be things like you never know what's going to happen during the week. So ultimately, this should be closing on something along those kinds of lines of a breakdown. And the free cash would be things that you can pay off, like would pay off your monthly credit card debts, your bills, your other expenses that you didn't do well in categorizing, right? So but basically your goal is to come up with some way so that you always plan 100% of your money every month, and that in the personal budget that you meet around these levels for those different categories so that you can fit within whatever your budget is, and then you can figure out whether or not you're able to succeed successfully financially in that, right? But so get back to the point of pie charts. You can, in that percentage, then figure out overall what your budget is, what your numbers are, and you can figure out with it how you want to set up your stuff. So going back to the discussion board, the idea is what two types of charts you need to that you think makes the most sense in personal budget. Now, any questions with any of that? Any concerns? I'm sure I probably threw a bunch of stuff at you, including like personal finance questions or personal budgeting. Okay. All right. So anyways, so once you get your set of data, you can highlight your set of data, so you add chart or insert column, or like you just saw me do there, where you make yourself a chart, make yourself a piece. Another types of charts you can use is like stack charts, where you could take a set of numbers, and stack charts look like, let's go to stack charts here in the quarterly sales, for instance, is where you see the total for each quarter going up, and you can tell by the numbers on what it looks like in this context, where the colors give you the sales region by quarter and by thing. So you can get a three-dimensional view effectively into your overall sales fairly effectively just by doing that. Yeah. The most common types of charts are like column, line, bar, area, pie. There are 15 types that exist within Excel. And you can get some quick layouts. It'll give you some basic setup of how it would work within charts. They're good for showing people how to overall numbers, quick setup. You can get some quick business logic out of it with your data sets by using charts to visualize what it is you're looking at, as opposed to just trying to dig into numbers to understand the numbers. So they're useful in a lot of ways, right? And Excel helps an awful lot in building out, making it very easy to be able to create and to understand. Some other items is, can you use those inside of Excel? The answer is yes. You can use it as OLE to take the charts and literally drop them directly into Word documents, and they'll be updated as you work within your Excel table. You can get those to be dynamically updated as you go. So sorry about that. Other things that you can do in there is you can have dynamic stuff, right? So in this case, I set up inside of PowerPoint an actual Excel table here that I could quite literally make changes on. And then when I go back to, you'll see it doing this way. This is a different way to do it. Instead of using Excel directly and then dropping it as where the other thing pulls it as a picture or an object in OLE, this case, it actually has the Excel itself embedded within the Excel table itself is embedded directly within the PowerPoint. So that way you can actually do some basic calculations directly inside of Word documents or PowerPoint packages that way. Another nice thing is, like, well, I never did fix this, but at one point, if you just pasted a picture, it does not dynamically update. It lets you just be like a JPEG or a BMP file directly in there, and you can size them and scale them however you want to. So you can drop pictures into other documents. OLE, you can do the same thing with Visio, where you can then make direct changes to your drawing, or have your source get changed, and then when you open up your report, it'll show up all those different things. So you can impress some of your customers at your business by giving them dynamically available data, or you can do that with your boss, right? So you could set it up so that every Monday he comes in and does some random or routine opening a couple of things, checking some reports, and you can have those reports automatically pull data from your data sources, such that he can walk in and have the latest information on his desk every morning, and from a business logic perspective, he can make the decisions as need be. So back to designing your charts. if you go to inside of the ribbon, there's under design, it shows you these chart styles. Those you can select from as a quick pull down of options, and then you can change various formats about it of your charting area. And then you can get into things like adding how you want things displayed, how you want the shapes and lines displayed. You want word art, word styles. You can insert text boxes into your thing in that context. So yeah, you can make your charts effectively look very pretty in that context, like a line chart, for instance, right? So you can get in there and you can quite literally go in there and make modifications to individual pieces, such that maybe you want to change its color. It help if I use it the right way. I can change its style. I can get into so you can make adjustments to your individual chart such that it can be easier to read, it can be easier to understand, and showing you something that has a lot of similar numbers doesn't help in that context. So yeah, hope that all made sense. And if you need to like change, you can say title here. You can make you set up however you need to make all your charts look the way you want to from your business perspective. So you can extrapolate the information you need to at a glance. The idea being to do it at a glance, so you can build dashboards such that you can look at your information up front. You can do pivot table runs and or refresh of charts and get you that data very, very quickly and very directly. Like I said, back to pie charts. They're talking about pieces of a pie, slices of a pie, and how everything works as a percentage of a whole. So that's the most important piece. Is everything is based on percentage of the total number, the base number, your calculated number. So if I go back to the budget thing and I put in these numbers as it talked to, then ultimately in this context, if you've calculated numbers and you were living on $3,000 budget a month, this is telling me that your rent number is $1,200 a month, that you're living at 40% of your income take home is being spent on just your mortgage, which is exceptionally high. And so then you have to make adjustments such as, well, maybe you should be living with a paid off car in order to bring down those kinds of things. So you can reduce your percentages on other stuff to help accommodate that, to make your life a little bit more comfortable. So ultimately 25% is what you should always be shooting for. 15-year 25% of your take of your monthly payment. That's so you can actually achieve payoff of a thing. So same thing, you can also do that to accommodate, all right, if you need to figure out how much you slept in a day, right? You can do it by percentages. You can come up with those numbers. So in this context, let's see, back to pie charts over here, sleeping. So if you are working 8 hours a day, that takes up a 30% of your time of the day. Average sleep is somewhere between 5 and 7 hours. So you can figure out, then you can spend, what is it you do for the rest of your time that you're awake and how you're spending your time. So you can actually calculate that for the sake of your own benefit. Hope that all made sense that I went through. A question I had a long time ago was the difference between a chart and a pie chart, and has to do with pie charts are about percentages. So there's an example of tax data from 2021 on how state governments, how will you pay taxes, or how the average person spends, what percentage of their taxes are based on what type. So, which is kind of skewed. And then you can get into line charts or graphing charts like this, where you can then talk about long periods of time and bits and numbers as things work. So One of the other IntelliPath questions is, when you're working with your data, you have to look at the data as a base of the whole base. In this case, it's 200 as your total base. And because it's 200 as a base, in order to achieve 25% or 12.5, in this case, this here makes it so the suspense is the lowest percentage, because you take the total base collectively and then you figure out the percentage of it the pi wise. And that's how you come to the fact that that particular genre is only 12% of the your base. But yeah, you can get fancy with it. So there's a couple of links on how to do this, but you can build dashboards into your business logic, so you can have at a glance answers using pivot tables and charts, so that you can get this information available to you fairly rapidly from the same set of data sources, so that you can, basically make it so you can more effectively run a business. So there's also such thing as scatter plots within. And scatter plots are basically where you have an X and Y axis and lots of dots. So where is it? So technically this type of chart is actually considered a scatter plot style chart, but it's correlated such that a date and a value have to match together from a formula perspective, because they're related, such that the amount of money spent in that context was based on a date thing. So you can plot out your charts such that you have it. So if you had a trending upward scatter plot, that would be where it's upward down. A downward correlation is when it's going down like that, or an uncorrelated one can be the dots actually go anywhere, because the X and Y axes have no relationship at all to each other. And that's the difference between correlated scatter plots and independent scatter plots, or non-correlated scatter plots. Has to do with whether or not the one piece of data is related to the other piece of data in any way, shape, or form. Because you can have advanced analysis done such that your two pieces of data are independent of each other. So here's an example of something that I had to do as part of RES 814 regarding scatter plots, is taking data that Old Faithful, the geyser at Yellowstone, does, in that it is predictable in the length between eruptions to the size of the eruption. So the shorter the distance between the two eruptions, it is predictable that the shorter the distance, the smaller the eruption and the less amount of water as actually used in that eruption at that time. And the longer it goes between the eruptions, the higher eruption, the higher the blast will be, as well as the amount of water utilized. And it is a fairly regular thing, where it goes off somewhere between 45 and 75 minutes every day. And it has to do with a number of factors leading into it, but that is it's all been, they have years of plotted data on that particular activity, and it's correlated to, they figured out the correlation is the length of time and the height and the amount of water are all independent variables that they couldn't explain at the time why it mattered. But eventually they figured out the correlation had to do with the amount versus the time between eruptions to that particular piece. So you can do some interesting things with that. But any questions based on any of the stuff that I talked about so far? You want to throw tomatoes, ask questions, disagree with statements I made? Okay. I have no from a gorilla. All right. Anything you guys want me to cover regarding the class you're in? Anything's going on? Any other questions? Other than that, I went through all of my prepared material at this point. So, all right. Well, I hope you all continue to do well. I think 13 people in this class today is a pretty good number to see of attendance. So I'm quite happy with that. Thank you, everybody. I will talk to you again next week then. Thanks.
Thank you.